doing. And it's because you changed this place. So thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for making Sterling Technologies somewhere people like me can actually succeed. After she left, Marcus sat quietly for a long time. This was why he had stayed. This was why the struggle had been worth it. Not for his own sake, though his career had certainly flourished, but for all the people who would now have opportunities they would have been denied before, for all the brilliant minds that would no longer be dismissed because of their race or background, for all the innovation that would come from diverse perspectives working together. Marcus thought back to that morning 6 months ago, sitting in a conference room listening to people mock him, question his abilities, plan his failure. He thought about how close he had come to walking away, and he thought about everything that would have been lost if he had. Change was possible. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. It required courage, commitment, and constant vigilance. But it was possible. Sterling Technologies was proof of that, and Marcus Thompson, along with Patricia Chen and others who refused to accept discrimination, were the ones who had made it happen. Not through grand gestures or inspiring speeches, but through the hard, daily work of challenging injustice wherever they found it. Through the determination to build something better, one decision at a time. Through the refusal to stay silent when staying silent would have been easier. That, Marcus thought, was how real change happened. And it was only just beginning. She immediately authorized a salary adjustment plus back pay for the previous 2 years. How did this happen? Marcus had asked Patricia during that meeting. Patricia had looked tired. Because we weren't paying attention. Because we assumed our systems were fair without actually checking. Because people like me, even those of us who have faced discrimination ourselves, sometimes get comfortable once we reach a certain level. We stop questioning. We stop digging. That ends now. Marcus also changed how Sterling Technologies approached its actual technology development. He insisted that every AI project go through an ethics review before development began. He created diverse testing groups to identify bias in algorithms. He pushed for transparency in how the company's AI systems made decisions. One of his proudest achievements came when Sterling Technologies released a new hiring algorithm for their clients. Unlike most such systems, which often perpetuated existing biases, Marcus's team had built one that actively promoted fairness. It had been featured in 3 major tech publications and won an innovation award. More importantly, it actually worked to reduce discrimination in hiring. Throughout these 6 months, Patricia had been Marcus's strongest ally. They met weekly to discuss progress and challenges. She used her influence as CFO to fund his initiatives and to push back against resistance from other executives. She became not just his supporter, but his friend. One afternoon, they were having coffee in Patricia's office when she asked him a question. "Do you ever regret accepting the position after everything that happened on interview day?" Marcus thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, some days, yes. When I face resistance from people who don't want to change, when I hear comments that remind me I'm still seen as different, when I feel the weight of being the one person pushing so hard for these changes. On those days, I think about how much easier it would have been to walk away." "And on the other days?" Patricia asked. Marcus smiled. "On the other days, I look at what we've accomplished. I see new faces in the office, people who wouldn't have gotten a chance here before. I see processes that actually work to reduce bias. I see technology being developed more ethically. I see real change happening. On those days, I know I made the right choice." Patricia nodded. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you stayed. You've changed this company in ways that go beyond any policy or procedure. You've changed how people think." "Not everyone," Marcus said with a slight laugh. "No, not everyone. But enough people. The culture shift is real, Marcus. I can feel it." A few days after that conversation, Marcus and Patricia were invited to speak at a major diversity and technology conference. The conference organizers had heard about Sterling Technologies' transformation and wanted them to share their story. Marcus was nervous about the presentation. He didn't want to make what happened sound like some inspiring story with a neat, happy ending. Real change was messy, difficult, and ongoing. But he also recognized that other people could learn from their experience. The conference room was packed when they took the stage. Hundreds of people from tech companies around the world had come to hear them speak. Patricia went first, walking through the timeline of events. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She talked about the racist comments, the immediate response, and the long-term changes they had implemented. Then Marcus took over, discussing the specific strategies they had used. He talked about blind resume reviews, structured interviews, and partnership with diverse educational institutions. He shared data showing how these changes had improved their hiring outcomes. He also talked about the resistance they had faced and how they had pushed through it. During the question and answer session, a young black woman in the audience raised her hand. "Mr. Thompson, my question is for you. As someone who experienced discrimination at this company before you even worked there, how did you find the strength to stay and try to change it? Why didn't you just go somewhere else?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment before answering. "That's a really good question, and I'm going to be honest with you. I almost did leave, and I wouldn't have blamed myself or anyone else who made that choice. Walking away from a place that hurt you is completely valid." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But I stayed for a few reasons. First, because I saw that there were people in power who were willing to take real action, not just make empty promises." Patricia didn't just apologize. She confronted the problem head-on and committed to systemic change. That mattered. Second, I stayed because I realized I had an opportunity to make a difference not just for me, but for everyone who might come after me. If I walked away, the system would have stayed the same. If I stayed and fought, maybe I could change it. Marcus looked directly at the young woman who asked the question. "But here's what I want you to understand. That doesn't mean staying is always the right choice. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is leave a toxic environment. Sometimes fighting isn't worth the personal cost. You have to make that decision for yourself, based on your own situation, your own needs, your own goals. What I will say is this. If you do choose to stay and fight, make sure you have allies. Make sure you have power. Make sure you have the resources and support to actually make change happen. Don't sacrifice yourself trying to fix a broken system all by yourself. That's not fair and it's not sustainable." The young woman nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. Several other people in the audience were nodding too. Another person asked Patricia a question. "Ms. Chen, you intervened very quickly and very publicly when you heard those racist comments. Was that difficult? Were you worried about the consequences?" Patricia smiled. "You know, people ask me that a lot. They act like what I did was heroic or risky. But I'll be honest with you. I wasn't thinking about being heroic. I wasn't worried about consequences. I was just angry. I was angry because I had heard those same kinds of comments about me throughout my career. I was angry because I knew exactly how Marcus felt in that moment. And I was angry because I finally had the power to do something about it, and I wasn't going to waste that power by staying silent." She continued, "Here's what I've learned in 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder. Silence is complicity. Every time you hear something wrong and say nothing, you're telling the people saying those things that it's okay. You're telling the people being hurt by those things that they don't matter. I promised myself years ago that if I ever got to a position of real power, I would use that power to stop the kind of discrimination I had faced. So when that moment came, I didn't hesitate." The audience broke into applause. Patricia looked a little embarrassed by the response, but Marcus could see that her words had resonated with people. After the conference, as they were walking back to their hotel, Marcus turned to Patricia. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Patricia asked. "For everything. For intervening that day. For supporting me these past 6 months. For being willing to share our story, even the ugly parts. For being the kind of leader I hope to become." Patricia stopped walking and looked at him. "Marcus, you already are that kind of leader. You've accomplished more in 6 months than many people accomplish in years. You've faced resistance with grace, you've implemented change with intelligence, and you've never compromised on your principles. I'm proud to work with you." They stood there for a moment. Two people who had faced discrimination in their careers, who had chosen to fight rather than accept it, who had used their power to create real change. They knew the work wasn't finished. There would be more challenges, more resistance, more moments of doubt, but they also knew they had built something meaningful together. Back at Sterling Technologies, the changes Marcus had implemented continued to take root. The company's workforce became more diverse. New voices brought new perspectives and new ideas. Innovation increased. Employee satisfaction scores went up. Even the bottom line improved as the company attracted top talent that had previously been overlooked. Marcus built his AI development team with care, recruiting brilliant people from diverse backgrounds. He created a culture where ethical considerations were as important as technical achievements. His team produced groundbreaking work on fair algorithms, transparent decision-making systems, and inclusive technology design. 1 year after that terrible interview day, Marcus was sitting in his office looking out at the city. His door was open, a policy he maintained to be accessible to his team. A young engineer knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Thompson, do you have a minute?" she asked. "Of course, come in," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair. "And please call me Marcus." The young engineer, a recent graduate from a historically black university, sat down nervously. "I just wanted to say thank you. I know you don't know this, but I interviewed here 2 years ago. I didn't get the position. Looking back at the feedback I received, it was full of those coded words about culture and fit. It hurt a lot." Marcus listened carefully. "But I kept learning, kept building my skills, and when I saw that Sterling Technologies had changed its hiring practices, I decided to try again. This time the process was completely different. I was evaluated fairly. I was judged on my actual abilities, and I got the job." She smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm doing the work I always dreamed of doing. I'm going to push for real change. I'm going to challenge assumptions. I'm going to make some people uncomfortable." "Good," Richard said. "That's exactly what we need. We have a culture problem here. We clearly do, and we need someone with the courage to address it directly. I'll want to review all hiring practices," Marcus continued. "I'll want to look at compensation across departments to check for disparities. I'll want to implement blind resume reviews and structured interview processes. I'll want to partner with historically black colleges and universities for recruitment. I'll want to create mentorship programs for underrepresented groups in tech." "All of that sounds excellent," Patricia said, "and as VP, you'll have the authority to implement those changes. We're not just offering you a title. We're offering you power to actually make a difference." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Patricia could see the internal struggle on his face. Part of him wanted to protect himself, to walk away from a company that had hurt him, but another part of him saw the opportunity, the chance to do meaningful work and create real change. "Can I have some time to think about this?" Marcus asked. "Of course," Richard said. "Take whatever time you need. We'd like to hear back from you within a week if possible, but we understand this is a big decision." Marcus stood up, carefully placing the offer letter back in the folder. "Thank you. I appreciate the offer, and I appreciate the conversation we've had today. I'll be in touch soon." After Marcus left, the 4 executives sat in silence for a moment. "Do you think he'll take it?" James asked. Patricia sighed. "I don't know. I hope so. But I'll understand if he doesn't. We heard him today. We showed him the ugly side of this company. No amount of money or fancy job titles can erase that." "What else can we do?" Sarah asked. "We do exactly what we said we'd do," Patricia said. "We investigate. We make changes. We hold people accountable. Whether Marcus Thompson joins us or not, we have to fix this. We owe that to him, to every other candidate who might have been treated this way, and to ourselves." Richard nodded. "I've already contacted an outside consulting firm to do the audit. They'll start next week, and I'm setting up a meeting with the entire company to address what happened. People need to know we're serious about this." For the next 3 days, Marcus thought about the offer. He talked to his sister Maya, who was excited but cautious. He talked to his mentor from MIT, who encouraged him to consider the opportunity carefully. He talked to friends in the tech industry, getting their advice on Sterling Technologies and what it might be like to work there. He also did his own research. He looked up Patricia Chen and read articles about her career. He found interviews where she talked about diversity and inclusion. He researched Sarah Kim and James Rodriguez, reading their published work and professional histories. He wanted to know if these people were genuine or if they were just good at saying the right things. On the 3rd day, Marcus went for a long walk in his neighborhood. He thought about his goals, his values, what he wanted to accomplish in his career. He thought about the kind of impact he wanted to have on the world. And he thought about whether Sterling Technologies could be the place where he made that impact. That evening, Marcus sent an email to Patricia Chen. It was short and to the point. He accepted the position as Vice President of AI Development and Ethics, but he included a note at the end. "I'm accepting this position because I believe I can make a real difference at Sterling Technologies, but I'm also accepting it as a challenge to all of you. Show me that your commitment to change is real. Show me that what happened in that break room was an exception, not the rule. I'm willing to build something great with you, but only if you're willing to do the hard work alongside me. When Patricia read the email, she smiled. Then she called Richard, Sarah, and James to share the news. Marcus Thompson was joining their team. Now the real work would begin. I'm going to push for real change. I'm going to challenge assumptions. I'm going to make some people uncomfortable. Good, Richard said. That's exactly what we need. We have a culture problem here. We clearly do, and we need someone with the courage to address it directly. I'll want to review all hiring practices, Marcus continued. I'll want to look at compensation across departments to check for disparities. I'll want to implement blind resume reviews and structured interview processes. I'll want to partner with historically black colleges and universities for recruitment. I'll want to create mentorship programs for underrepresented groups in tech. All of that sounds excellent, Patricia said. And as VP, you'll have the authority to implement those changes. We're not just offering you a title. We're offering you power to actually make a difference. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Patricia could see the internal struggle on his face. Part of him wanted to protect himself, to walk away from a company that had hurt him, but another part of him saw the opportunity, the chance to do meaningful work and create real change. Can I have some time to think about this? Marcus asked. Of course, Richard said. Take whatever time you need. We'd like to hear back from you within a week if possible, but we understand this is a big decision. Marcus stood up, carefully placing the offer letter back in the folder. Thank you. I appreciate the offer, and I appreciate the conversation we've had today. I'll be in touch soon. After Marcus left, the four executives sat in silence for a moment. Do you think he'll take it? James asked. Patricia sighed. I don't know, I hope so. But I'll understand if he doesn't. We heard him today. We showed him the ugly side of this company. No amount of money or fancy job titles can erase that. What else can we do? Sarah asked. We do exactly what we said we'd do, Patricia said. We investigate. We make changes. We hold people accountable. Whether Marcus Thompson joins us or not, we have to fix this. We owe that to him, to every other candidate who might have been treated this way, and to ourselves. Richard nodded. I've already contacted an outside consulting firm to do the audit. They'll start next week, and I'm setting up a meeting with the entire company to address what happened. People need to know we're serious about this. For the next 3 days, Marcus thought about the offer. He talked to his sister Maya, who was excited but cautious. He talked to his mentor from MIT, who encouraged him to consider the opportunity carefully. He talked to friends in the tech industry, getting their advice on Sterling Technologies and what it might be like to work there. He also did his own research. He looked up Patricia Chen and read articles about her career. He found interviews where she talked about diversity and inclusion. He researched Sarah Kim and James Rodriguez, reading their published work and professional histories. He wanted to know if these people were genuine or if they were just good at saying the right things. On the 3rd day, Marcus went for a long walk in his neighborhood. He thought about his goals, his values, what he wanted to accomplish in his career. He thought about the kind of impact he wanted to have on the world. And he thought about whether Sterling Technologies could be the place where he made that impact. That evening, Marcus sent an email to Patricia Chen. It was short and to the point. He accepted the position as Vice President of AI Development and Ethics, but he included a note at the end. I'm accepting this position because I believe I can make a real difference at Sterling Technologies. But I'm also accepting it as a challenge to all of you. Show me that your commitment to change is real. Show me that what happened in that break room was an exception, not the rule. I'm willing to build something great with you, but only if you're willing to do the hard work alongside me. When Patricia read the email, she smiled. Then she called Richard, Sarah, and James to share the news. Marcus Thompson was joining their team. Now the real work would begin. I'm going to push for real change. I'm going to challenge assumptions. I'm going to make some people uncomfortable. Good, Richard said. That's exactly what we need. We have a culture problem here. We clearly do, and we need someone with the courage to address it directly. I'll want to review all hiring practices, Marcus continued. I'll want to look at compensation across departments to check for disparities. I'll want to implement blind resume reviews and structured interview processes. I'll want to partner with historically black colleges and universities for recruitment. I'll want to create mentorship programs for underrepresented groups in tech. All of that sounds excellent, Patricia said, and as VP, You'll have the authority to implement those changes. We're not just offering you a title. We're offering you power to actually make a difference." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Patricia could see the internal struggle on his face. Part of him wanted to protect himself, to walk away from a company that had hurt him, but another part of him saw the opportunity, the chance to do meaningful work and create real change. "Can I have some time to think about this?" Marcus asked. "Of course," Richard said. "Take whatever time you need. We'd like to hear back from you within a week if possible, but we understand this is a big decision." Marcus stood up, carefully placing the offer letter back in the folder. "Thank you. I appreciate the offer, and I appreciate the conversation we've had today. I'll be in touch soon." After Marcus left, the four executives sat in silence for a moment. "Do you think he'll take it?" James asked. "He'll be conducting your interview with me." Sarah stepped forward first, extending her hand. "Mr. Thompson, I want to echo what Patricia said. What happened this morning was completely unacceptable, and I'm deeply sorry you had to experience it. I've been looking forward to meeting you. I've read several of your papers on AI ethics, and I think your work is incredibly important." James shook his hand next. "I agree completely. Your research on bias in machine learning algorithms is exactly the kind of thinking we need here. I'm glad you decided to stay." Marcus felt something shift inside him. These people seemed genuine. They knew his work. They respected his expertise. Maybe this interview could actually be what he had hoped it would be. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to discuss my ideas with you." They all sat down around the conference table. Patricia pulled out her notebook. Sarah opened her laptop. James had his phone ready to take notes. This was really happening. This was going to be a real interview. "So, Mr. Thompson," Sarah began, "why don't you start by telling us about your vision for ethical AI development? What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the industry right now?" Marcus took a breath and began to speak. As he talked about his research, his ideas, his experience building AI systems that were fair and inclusive, he felt his confidence returning. This was what he was good at. This was why he belonged here. The interview lasted for 2 hours, far longer than originally scheduled. Sarah challenged his technical approaches, but in a way that showed she understood the complexity of the work. James played devil's advocate on some of his proposals, but Marcus could tell he was genuinely interested in the discussion. Patricia asked him about leadership, about team building, about how he would handle difficult situations. Marcus found himself enjoying the conversation. These were smart people asking smart questions. They weren't trying to trick him or make him fail. They were trying to understand his capabilities and his vision. When they finally finished, Sarah sat back in her chair with a smile. "Mr. Thompson, that was impressive. Your approach to handling algorithmic bias is sophisticated and practical. I particularly liked your idea about diverse testing groups throughout the development process." James nodded. "And your thoughts on transparency in AI decision-making systems are exactly what the industry needs more of. Too many companies treat their algorithms like black boxes." Patricia closed her notebook. "Marcus, would you mind giving us about 15 minutes to discuss among ourselves? We'll call you back in shortly." "Of course," Marcus said. He watched as the 3 executives left the conference room and headed back toward the boardroom. Alone again, Marcus allowed himself to feel hopeful. The interview had gone well. Really well. They had treated him with respect, engaged seriously with his ideas, and seemed genuinely interested in his expertise. Maybe this could work after all. In the boardroom, the 3 executives gathered around the table. Richard Morrison had joined them, wanting to hear about how the interview had gone. The tension from earlier in the morning still hung in the air, but now there was also excitement. Sarah Kim spoke first. "He's exceptional. I mean, truly exceptional. His understanding of AI ethics goes beyond theory. He has practical experience implementing bias detection systems. He knows how to build diverse teams. He thinks about the social impact of technology, not just the technical aspects." James Rodriguez nodded enthusiastically. "I agree completely. When I asked him about innovation processes, he talked about including multiple perspectives from the beginning of development, not just at the end as a checkbox. That's exactly the kind of forward thinking we need." Patricia was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "He's better than we deserve right now. Better than this company has shown we deserve after what happened this morning. But that's exactly why we need him." Richard Morrison looked at the 3 of them. So we're all in agreement that we want to hire him? Absolutely, Sarah said without hesitation. Without question, James added. Patricia leaned forward. But we can't just offer him the standard senior engineer position. That's not enough. Not after what he went through today. Not after what he brings to the table. We need to make him an offer that shows we're serious. What are you thinking? Richard asked. I'm thinking we create a new position, Vice President of AI Development and Ethics. He would have direct access to the board. He would have the autonomy to build his division his way. He would have real power to implement his vision. Sarah's eyes widened. That's a bold move. We've never created a VP position for someone coming in from outside. Maybe that's part of our problem, Patricia said. We keep talking about innovation and change, but we keep doing things the same old way. Marcus Thompson is brilliant, and he has insights that could transform how we approach technology development. Why wouldn't we give him the authority to actually make that happen? Richard was nodding slowly. What kind of compensation package are we talking about? Patricia pulled out her tablet and started typing numbers. I'm thinking base salary of $220,000, with a signing bonus of $50,000. Full equity package, 20,000 shares vested over 4 years. Executive benefits including car allowance and education budget for continued learning. James let out a low whistle. That's significantly above what we originally budgeted for this position. It's what he's worth, Patricia said firmly. And honestly, it's what we should be paying for this level of expertise and responsibility. We've been underpaying for talent because we could get away with it. That stops now. Sarah was doing calculations on her laptop. You know what? Patricia's right. If we're going to ask someone to come in and change our culture, to challenge our processes, to build something new, we need to compensate them appropriately. This isn't just about Marcus. It's about setting a new standard. Richard looked at the three of them and smiled. Okay, let's do it. Patricia, you want to make the offer? I think we should all make it together, Patricia said. Show him that this is a unified decision from the leadership team. 10 minutes later, they called Marcus back into the conference room. He entered with his briefcase, clearly prepared to leave if necessary. Patricia noticed the way he held himself, ready for disappointment even though he was hoping for good news. Mr. Thompson. Please sit down, Patricia said, gesturing to a chair. Marcus sat, looking at the 4 executives facing him. His expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Richard Morrison spoke first. Marcus, we want to start by saying that what happened this morning was wrong. Unacceptable. We've taken immediate action, and we're going to take long-term action as well. But words are cheap. What matters is what we do next. Marcus nodded, waiting. Patricia took over. We were extremely impressed with your interview, your technical knowledge, your vision for ethical AI development, your leadership experience, your understanding of how to build inclusive systems. You're not just qualified for the senior engineer position we advertised, you're overqualified. Which is why, Sarah continued, we want to offer you something different. We want to create a new position for you. Vice President of AI Development and Ethics. Marcus's carefully neutral expression cracked slightly, showing surprise. Vice President? Yes, James said. You would have direct access to our board of directors. You would have the authority to build your own division, hire your own team, implement your own processes. This wouldn't be you fitting into our existing structure. This would be you creating something new. Patricia slid a folder across the table to Marcus. This is the formal offer letter. Base salary of $220,000 annually, with a $50,000 signing bonus, 20,000 shares of company stock vested over 4 years, executive benefits package, and most importantly, real autonomy to do the work you know needs to be done. Marcus opened the folder and stared at the numbers. He read through the offer letter slowly, his eyes moving across each line. When he looked up, his expression was complicated. There was excitement there, but also caution. This is generous, Marcus said carefully. More than generous. But I need to know something. Is this guilt compensation? Are you offering me this because of what happened this morning? Patricia had expected this question. No, this is what you're worth. What you've always been worth. We're just the first company to recognize it clearly enough to make the appropriate offer. If those 2 recruiters hadn't said what they said, if this morning had gone normally, we would still be sitting here right now realizing we need to make you a better offer than we originally planned. Let me be direct, Sarah said. I've been in tech for 20 years. I've interviewed hundreds of candidates. I've read thousands of resumes. Your work on algorithmic bias is some of the most sophisticated I've seen. Your papers on AI ethics are being cited by researchers all over the world. Your experience building and leading teams is exactly what we need. This offer isn't charity. It's smart business. Marcus looked down at the offer letter again. His hand traced over the words Vice President. Patricia could see him processing, thinking, weighing his options. If I accept this, Marcus said slowly, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to just smile and be grateful. The disappointment. But also something else. A question. A challenge. What are you going to do about this? Mr. Thompson, Patricia said, her voice gentle now. All the steel from the break room conversation softened. I'm Patricia Chen, Chief Financial Officer of Sterling Technologies. On behalf of our company, I offer you our deepest apologies for what you just experienced. Marcus stood up slowly. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he looked at Patricia with an expression that was carefully neutral. She recognized that look. It was armor, protection against showing vulnerability. She had worn the same expression countless times herself. Thank you, Ms. Chen, Marcus said. His voice was polite but distant. I appreciate the apology, but we both know what I heard, and I think we both know what it means. Yes, Patricia said simply. We do. What you heard was racism. Clear, ugly, explicit racism, and there's no excuse for it. Marcus seemed surprised by her directness. Most people in her position would have used softer words, would have talked around the issue without naming it directly. But Patricia was done with corporate euphemisms. Sometimes you had to call things what they were. Those 2 recruiters have been suspended, Patricia continued. They will likely be terminated after our investigation is complete. We're going to audit every hiring decision they've been involved with. We're going to make changes to our recruitment process. We're going to bring in outside consultants to review our practices. None of this will undo what you just experienced, but I want you to know we're taking it seriously. Marcus nodded slowly. I appreciate that, Ms. Chen. Really, I do. But you and I both know this isn't just about 2 bad recruiters. This is bigger than that. You're right, Patricia said, taking a step closer. You're absolutely right. This is about a system that allowed them to feel comfortable saying those things at all. This is about a culture that we've failed to build properly. And I'm not going to stand here and make promises about how different we are, because clearly we're not different enough. She pulled out a chair and sat down at the conference table, gesturing for Marcus to sit as well. It was an unusual gesture, breaking the typical corporate hierarchy. But Patricia wanted this conversation to be real, not just another polished performance. Marcus sat back down, watching her carefully. So what happens now? He asked. Patricia looked at Marcus for a long moment before answering his question. She wanted to choose her words carefully. This young man had just been hurt badly, and empty corporate promises would only make things worse. That depends on you, Patricia said honestly. You have every right to walk out that door right now. You have every right to never give Sterling Technologies another thought. What happened to you was wrong, and no one would blame you for leaving. Marcus leaned back in his chair. But, he said, because he could hear there was more coming. But, Patricia continued, I'm asking you to consider staying for your interview, not with those 2 recruiters. They're done here. Instead, you would interview with me, with our CTO Sarah Kim, and with our Chief Innovation Officer James Rodriguez. People who actually understand what you bring to this company. Why should I? Marcus asked. The question wasn't rude. It was genuine. He wanted to understand her reasoning. Patricia took a deep breath. I'm going to be completely honest with you, Mr. Thompson. I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't say, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you walk out that door right now, those 2 people in the break room will feel like they were right about you. Marcus's eyebrows raised. Excuse me? They'll tell themselves that you weren't really serious about this opportunity. They'll say you couldn't handle the pressure. They'll find some way to twist the situation to confirm their prejudices. I've seen it happen before. People like that always find a way to justify their beliefs. So I should stay to prove them wrong? Marcus said, and there was an edge to his voice now. I should perform for them. Show them I'm one of the good ones? No, Patricia said firmly. That's not what I'm saying at all. You shouldn't stay for them. You should stay for you, because you prepared for this interview, because you have valuable ideas about artificial intelligence ethics that this company needs, because you deserve a fair shot at this position. Don't let their ignorance cost you an opportunity you've earned. Marcus was quiet for a moment. His hands were folded on the table in front of him, and Patricia could see him thinking, weighing his options. "Can I ask you something, Miss Chen?" Marcus said finally. "Of course. Why do you care so much? I mean, you shut down that situation fast. You came here personally to talk to me. You're asking me to stay. Why?" Patricia smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Because 20 years ago I was sitting where you are right now. Different company, different circumstances, but the same feeling. I was interviewing for a finance position, and I overheard two managers talking about me. They said I probably got my accounting degree because colleges needed to fill their Asian quota. They said women were too emotional for high-pressure financial work. They said I would probably quit as soon as I got married and had kids." Marcus's expression softened. "What did you do?" "I almost left," Patricia admitted. "I almost walked right out the door. But then I thought about all the people who had supported me, all the work I had put in, all the goals I still wanted to achieve, and I decided that I wasn't going to let two ignorant people stop me. So I stayed. I did the interview. I got the job. And I made it my mission to prove every single one of their assumptions wrong." "Did you?" Marcus asked. "I'm the chief financial officer of a major tech company," Patricia said with a slight smile. "I've been here for 12 years. I've helped grow this company from 50 million in annual revenue to 500 million. I oversee a department of 40 people. And yes, I got married and had 2 kids, and somehow I managed to do both that and my job. So yes, I proved them wrong." Marcus nodded slowly. "But you shouldn't have had to prove anything. You were already qualified." "Exactly," Patricia said. "And so are you. Marcus, I read your resume before this morning. I read 2 of your published papers on AI bias. You're not just qualified for this position, you're exceptional. And I don't want you to miss out on an opportunity to do groundbreaking work because 2 small-minded people said awful things." "But what if the whole company is like that?" Marcus asked. "What if Jennifer and David are just the ones who got caught?" It was a fair question, and Patricia respected him for asking it. "I can't promise you that we don't have other people with prejudiced views. In a company of 500 employees, statistics say we probably do. What I can promise you is that we're going to work to change that culture. And I can promise you that you would have allies here. People who will support you, who will stand up for you, who will value your contributions." "People like you," Marcus said. "Yes, people like me, but also others. Sarah Kim, our CTO, has been fighting for better diversity practices for years. James Rodriguez has been pushing for more inclusive innovation processes. Our CEO, Richard Morrison, he's not perfect, but he's genuinely committed to change. You wouldn't be alone here." Marcus looked at his tablet, at his presentation materials, at everything he had prepared. Patricia could see him struggling with the decision. Part of him wanted to leave, to protect himself from further hurt, but another part of him wanted to fight, wanted to take this opportunity. "If I stay," Marcus said slowly, "I need you to understand something. I'm not going to smile and pretend everything is fine. I'm not going to be grateful just because you're offering me basic respect. And I'm going to have high expectations about how this company treats not just me, but everyone." "Good," Patricia said. "That's exactly the attitude we need. We don't want someone who will just accept things as they are. We want someone who will push us to be better." Marcus took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll stay for the interview. But I'm not making any promises beyond that." "That's all I'm asking," Patricia said. She stood up and extended her hand. Marcus stood as well and shook it. "Thank you for giving us a chance to do this right." After Patricia left the conference room, Marcus sat back down and tried to collect his thoughts. His hands had stopped shaking, but his mind was still racing. Everything had changed in the last hour. He had arrived at Sterling Technologies excited and hopeful. Now he felt cautious, guarded, uncertain. He thought about his sister Maya, who had texted him good luck. He thought about his parents, who had always taught him to stand up for himself, but also to be smart about picking his battles. He thought about every other job interview he had been to, every time he had wondered if someone was judging him fairly or just seeing his race. Marcus opened his tablet and looked at his presentation again. He had worked hard on this. His ideas about ethical AI development were solid. His vision for building inclusive technology systems was clear. Whatever happened in the next hour, he would show them exactly what he was capable of. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Patricia Chen was back along with two other people. One was an Asian woman with short black hair and glasses, wearing a blue dress. The other was a Latino man in a gray suit carrying a notebook. "Mr. Thompson," Patricia said, "I'd like to introduce you to Sarah Kim, our Chief Technology Officer, and James Rodriguez, our Chief Innovation Officer." "That includes," Patricia continued, taking a step into the room, "the boardroom where the entire executive team is gathered, and it includes the conference room next door where Mr. Thompson has been sitting, listening to every single word you've said about him." David found his voice first. "We didn't—" The intercom. "You thought you were having a private conversation." Patricia's expression didn't change. "You were wrong. But that's not the point, is it? The point is what you said. The point is that you judged a highly qualified candidate based on nothing but the color of his skin. The point is that you planned to sabotage his interview. The point is that you represent this company, and your words reflect on all of us." Jennifer tried to recover, her voice shaking. "Ms. Chen, please, you have to understand. We were just talking. We didn't mean anything by it. We were just being realistic about what?" Patricia interrupted. "Be very careful about how you finish that sentence." Jennifer Walsh stood frozen in the break room, her coffee cup still in her hand. She looked at David Brennan, hoping he might have something to say that would fix this situation. But David looked just as terrified as she felt. Behind Patricia Chen, they could now see other executives gathering in the hallway. This wasn't just a private reprimand. This was public. This was serious. "Ms. Chen," Jennifer started again, her voice desperate now. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. What you heard, it wasn't. We were talking about general concerns, about making sure candidates are really qualified, not about race specifically." Patricia took another step forward. She was not a tall woman, but in that moment she seemed to fill the entire room with her presence. "Don't insult my intelligence by lying to my face. I heard every word. So did everyone else on this floor. You specifically mentioned his address, implied he only got into MIT because of affirmative action, and planned to give him impossible questions to make him fail. Those are your words, not mine." David tried a different approach. His voice took on a defensive tone. "Look, we've hired plenty of diverse candidates before. I have nothing against anyone. We just have legitimate concerns about whether certain candidates will fit our team culture and performance standards. That's part of our job as recruiters." "Team culture," Patricia repeated, and there was something dangerous in the way she said those words. "Performance standards."
Do you know what those phrases actually mean when you use them the way you just did?
They're code words. They're ways to justify discrimination while sounding professional. Richard Morrison had entered the hallway now, along with Sarah Kim and James Rodriguez. The CEO looked furious, but he was letting Patricia handle this. He understood that this was her moment, her fight to lead. As a white male CEO, he knew that sometimes the best thing he could do was step back and let the people who truly understood discrimination take charge. Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger. "Let me tell you what I heard. I heard 2 employees of this company decide that a black man couldn't possibly have earned his achievements. I heard you assume that his MIT degree was given to him rather than earned by him. I heard you mock where he lives. I heard you plan to sabotage his interview with questions designed to make him fail. And I heard you laugh about it like it was all just a joke." "We weren't laughing at him," Jennifer protested weakly. It was just casual conversation." "Casual conversation?" Patricia's laugh was bitter and hard. "Is that what we're calling racism now? Casual conversation?" The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Racism. Patricia had said it out loud, had named what everyone was thinking. Jennifer and David both flinched as if she had struck them. "That's not fair," David said, his face flushing red. "You can't just throw that word around. We're not racists. We work in HR, we help people. We just have high standards." Patricia moved closer to him. "You have high standards? Then let me tell you about Marcus Thompson's standards. He graduated at the top of his class at MIT. Not just graduated, but at the very top. He earned that place through a national mathematics competition, competing against thousands of students from all backgrounds. He has published 12 papers in peer-reviewed academic journals about artificial intelligence ethics. 12 papers that other experts in the field read and approved. He currently leads a team of 20 engineers at DataCore Solutions, a team he built from nothing. His work has been featured in tech conferences around the world. So tell me, what exactly are your standards and how does he fail to meet them? Jennifer and David had no answer. They stood there looking at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at Patricia Chen's face. I'll tell you what I think, Patricia said, her voice dropping lower. I think your standards are simple. You see a black man's name on a resume, and you decide he must not be qualified. You see an address from the east side of town and you make assumptions about his background. You see diversity, and you see a problem to manage rather than a strength to embrace. Those are your standards, and those standards have no place at Sterling Technologies. Richard Morrison finally stepped forward into the break room. Jennifer, David, I want to be absolutely clear about what's happening here. You are both suspended, effective immediately. You will not return to your desks. You will not access your computers. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings and you will leave the building within the next 30 minutes. Jennifer's face crumpled. Mr. Morrison, please. This is my career. I have a family. I have bills to pay. You can't just fire me over a misunderstanding. I'm not firing you yet, Richard said firmly. You're suspended pending a full investigation. We will review every hiring decision you've been involved with over the past several years. We will interview other candidates you've evaluated. We will look at patterns in your work. And then we will make a final decision about your employment here. But right now you need to leave. This isn't right, David said, his voice rising. You're overreacting. Every company has private conversations. You can't punish us for something we said when we thought no one was listening. Sarah Kim stepped into the break room now. The chief technology officer had been silent until this moment, but now she spoke with quiet intensity. That's exactly the point, Mr. Brennan. You said these things because you thought no one was listening. That means these are your real thoughts, your real attitudes. If you had said them in front of Mr. Thompson, at least you would have been honest about your prejudice. Instead, you were planning to smile to his face while sabotaging him behind his back. That's not just discrimination. That's cruelty, James Rodriguez added. And for what it's worth, I've read Marcus Thompson's work on AI ethics. He's brilliant. He's exactly the kind of innovative thinker we need. The fact that you two couldn't see that says everything about your judgment and nothing about his qualifications. Patricia turned to Richard. I want their office access revoked now. I want their email accounts locked. I want a complete audit of every single candidate they've rejected or passed over in the last 5 years. And I want it done by an outside firm, not by our internal HR team. Agreed, Richard said. He pulled out his phone and began making calls. Patricia looked at Jennifer and David one more time. You asked me if this is fair. You want to know what's not fair. A qualified candidate sitting in that conference room right now, questioning whether he should even stay for his interview. A man who worked incredibly hard to build his skills and credentials, wondering if any of it matters because people like you will always see his race before his resume. That's what's not fair. She turned and walked out of the break room. The executives in the hallway parted to let her through. Patricia moved with purpose back toward the conference room where Marcus waited. She knew what she needed to do next. Punishing Jennifer and David was necessary, but it wasn't enough. Marcus Thompson deserved more than just witnessing people get in trouble. He deserved respect. He deserved an apology. He deserved a real opportunity. As Patricia walked down the hallway, she thought about her own career. She remembered being passed over for a promotion 15 years ago. She had known she was the most qualified person for the job, but it had gone to a white man with less experience. When she asked why, her boss had given her vague answers about leadership presence and cultural fit. She had understood what those words really meant. She had almost quit that day. Almost walked away from Sterling Technologies and never looked back. But something had kept her there. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the determination to prove everyone wrong. Or maybe it was the hope that she could eventually rise high enough to change things to make sure other people didn't face what she had faced. Now she was the chief financial officer. She had power. She had influence. She had the ability to make real change happen. And she was going to use it. Patricia reached the conference room door and paused for just a moment. Through the glass, she could see Marcus Thompson still sitting at the table. He had closed his laptop. His presentation materials were neatly stacked. He looked like a man who had already made the decision to leave. She opened the door and stepped inside. Marcus looked up at her and their eyes met again. This time Patricia could see everything in his face. The hurt, the anger, In the executive boardroom, Patricia Chen was settling into her chair with a thick folder of quarterly reports. The meeting was scheduled to start at 10 o'clock, but executives always arrived early to prepare. Patricia had been with Sterling Technologies for 12 years, working her way up from senior accountant to chief financial officer. It had been a long journey filled with challenges, but she had never given up. She opened her folder and began reviewing the numbers from the last quarter. Revenue was up, expenses were controlled, and their investments in new technology were starting to pay off. It was good news, the kind of news that would make the board happy. But Patricia's mind kept wandering to other matters. She had been pushing the company to improve its diversity hiring practices for months now, and progress had been slow. The other executives filed into the room one by one. Richard Morrison, the CEO, carried his laptop and a cup of coffee. Sarah Kim, the chief technology officer, was typing something on her phone. James Rodriguez, the chief innovation officer, was chatting with the vice president of marketing about a new campaign. Everyone seemed relaxed and ready for a routine quarterly meeting. Patricia was about to speak to Richard about adding a diversity report to the agenda when she heard something odd. A voice was coming through the speakers mounted in the ceiling. At first, she thought it was just feedback from the audio system. The building had an intercom network that connected all the major rooms, used mainly for company-wide announcements. Sometimes it caused technical problems, but as Patricia listened more carefully, she realized these weren't random sounds. These were actual voices having a conversation. She frowned and looked up at the speakers, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. "I don't know why we're wasting time with this Marcus guy," a woman's voice said clearly, through the speakers. Patricia's hand froze over her reports. Marcus. That was the name of the candidate scheduled to interview this morning. She had reviewed his resume herself and been impressed by his credentials. MIT graduate, 10 years of experience, published research in artificial intelligence ethics. He was exactly the kind of person they needed. The woman's voice continued, "You know how these diversity hires go. They look good on paper, but when it comes to actually performing..." Patricia felt her stomach drop. She looked around the boardroom. Had anyone else heard that? Richard was still focused on his laptop. Sarah was still on her phone. Most of the other executives were busy with their own preparations. But Patricia had heard it clearly, and the words made her blood run cold. A man's voice responded, laughing, "Tell me about it." "But the board's pushing for representation. We'll go through the motions, ask him some impossible questions, and when he can't answer, we'll have our documentation that we tried." Now Patricia wasn't the only one listening. Sarah Kim had looked up from her phone, her expression confused. Richard Morrison had stopped typing and was staring at the ceiling speakers. One by one, the other executives in the room began to realize that something very wrong was happening. Patricia recognized the voices now. Jennifer Walsh and David Brennan, both recruiters from the Human Resources Department. They must be in the break room that shared the same audio system as the boardroom. Someone must have left the intercom connection open from the morning's all-hands meeting. "Did you see his address?" Jennifer's voice continued. "East Side. Probably affirmative action all the way through. MIT scholarship, I'm guessing. Not like he earned it the way real candidates do." Patricia's hands gripped the edge of the conference table so hard her knuckles turned white. She was a woman of color herself, someone who had faced subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination throughout her career. She knew exactly what it felt like to have people assume you didn't deserve your achievements, and now she was hearing the same ugly prejudice being directed at a candidate who was probably sitting in the next room, preparing for his interview. Richard Morrison reached for the intercom controls, clearly intending to turn off the system. But Patricia held up her hand, stopping him. "Wait," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Patricia, we should..." Richard started to say. "Wait," Patricia repeated, more firmly this time. She wanted to hear everything. She needed to know exactly what was being said. David's laugh came through the speakers again. "The funny thing is, he probably thinks he actually has a chance. Like we're going to put him in charge of anything important. Can you imagine?" "Right?" Jennifer responded. "I've already drafted the rejection email. Something polite about going with a candidate who was a better fit for the team culture. That's always a safe way to say it." The boardroom had fallen completely silent. Every executive was now listening to the conversation. Some looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked angry. Patricia could see Richard's face turning red, whether from embarrassment or rage she couldn't tell. In the conference room next door, Marcus Thompson could hear every word too. The same audio system that was broadcasting to the boardroom was also playing in the smaller conference room, where he waited. His hands, which had been confidently holding his presentation notes, began to shake. Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. For a moment he couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening, not here. Not at a company he had researched so carefully. Not after all the preparation and hope he had invested in this opportunity. He wanted to stand up and leave immediately. He wanted to grab his briefcase and walk out of the building and never look back, but something kept him in his chair. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was a small part of him that hoped this was some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. Or maybe it was the years of having to face discrimination that had taught him to keep his composure, even when everything inside him was screaming. Back in the boardroom, Patricia Chen was making a decision. She had spent 20 years navigating corporate America as an Asian woman. She had heard whispered comments. She had been passed over for promotions. She had watched less qualified men get opportunities she deserved. She had learned when to bite her tongue and when to speak up, when to be political and when to be direct. This was a moment for directness. Patricia stood up from her chair. The movement was sudden enough that everyone in the room looked at her. The voices were still coming through the speakers, still discussing Marcus Thompson as if he were nothing more than a box to check on a diversity form. "Excuse me?" Patricia said. Her voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. Richard Morrison looked at her. "Patricia, let me handle this. I'll go talk to HR and—" "No." The single word cut through the room like a knife. Patricia was already moving toward the door. "This is happening now." Sarah Kim started to stand as if to follow her. "Should we all—" "Stay here," Patricia said, not looking back. "But you might want to come into the hallway in a minute. This needs to be witnessed." She walked out of the boardroom with purpose in every step. Her heels clicked against the polished floor of the hallway. The break room was just down the corridor, past the conference room where Marcus sat. As Patricia passed the glass walls of that conference room, she saw him. Marcus Thompson was sitting very still in his chair. His hands were flat on the table in front of him. His eyes were staring straight ahead, but Patricia could see the pain and anger in his face. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that moment an understanding passed between them. She knew what he was feeling because she had felt it herself more times than she could count. Patricia gave him a single nod. It was a small gesture, but it carried a promise. This would not stand. This would not be ignored. This would not be swept under the rug with meaningless apologies and diversity training sessions that changed nothing. She continued to the break room. Through the small window in the door, she could see Jennifer and David still talking, completely unaware that their conversation had been broadcast throughout the executive floor. They looked relaxed, comfortable, like two people gossiping about something unimportant rather than destroying someone's dignity with their words. Behind Patricia, the executives from the boardroom were filing into the hallway. They stood at a distance, uncertain about what was going to happen but unwilling to miss it. Richard Morrison was among them, his expression grave. He had already pulled out his phone and was texting someone, probably the head of human resources. Patricia took one more deep breath. She thought about every time someone had underestimated her because of her race or gender. She thought about every qualified person of color who had been passed over because people like Jennifer and David decided they weren't a good fit. She thought about the responsibility that came with her position, the power she had to either use or waste. Then she pushed open the break room door. The door swung wide with enough force to bang against the wall. Jennifer and David both jumped, spinning around to see who had entered. Their faces went from surprise to confusion to dawning horror as they recognized the chief financial officer standing in the doorway. Ms. Walsh. Mr. Brennan. Patricia's voice was ice cold. Every word was carefully controlled, precise. The intercom system has been broadcasting your conversation to the entire executive floor for the past 5 minutes. Jennifer's face went pale. David's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Marcus Thompson checked his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. He had arrived at Sterling Technologies 30 minutes early, just like his mother had always taught him. "When you're black in America," she used to say, You have to be twice as good and twice as prepared. Marcus had taken those words to heart throughout his entire career. The lobby of Sterling Technologies was impressive. Tall glass windows stretched from floor to ceiling, letting in streams of morning sunlight. Modern art pieces decorated the white walls, and a large fountain bubbled peacefully in the center of the space. Everything about the building screamed success and innovation. This was exactly the kind of company Marcus had dreamed of working for since his college days. He smoothed down his navy blue suit jacket and adjusted his tie. Inside his leather briefcase were 3 copies of his resume, a tablet loaded with his presentation, and a notebook filled with questions he had prepared about the company. Marcus had spent the last 2 weeks researching Sterling Technologies. He knew their annual revenue, their current projects, and even the names of all the executives he might meet today. The receptionist, a friendly woman with bright red hair, smiled at him from behind her desk. "Mr. Thompson, right?" she asked warmly. "Yes, that's me," Marcus replied, returning her smile. "You're here for the senior software engineer position. Let me show you to the conference room where you'll wait. Your interview is scheduled for 10 o'clock, but we like to get our candidates settled in early." She stood up and gestured for him to follow her. They walked down a long hallway lined with photos of the company's achievements. Awards, team photos, and newspaper articles showcased Sterling Technologies' growth over the past 15 years. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. This could be his future. This could be where he finally got to work on the kind of projects that would make a real difference in the world. The receptionist opened a door to a spacious conference room. Large windows made up one entire wall, offering a view of the city below. A long table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by comfortable leather chairs. "Make yourself at home," she said. "Can I get you some water or coffee?" "Water would be great, thank you," Marcus said. As the receptionist left, Marcus set his briefcase on the table and pulled out his materials. He had worked so hard to get to this point. 10 years of experience in software engineering, a master's degree from MIT, and countless late nights building his skills had all led to this moment. The position at Sterling Technologies would be a huge step forward in his career. He opened his tablet and began reviewing his presentation one more time. The role was for leading their new artificial intelligence division, and Marcus had spent weeks perfecting his pitch. He had ideas about ethical AI development, about building systems that were fair and unbiased, about creating technology that helped everyone, not just a select few. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Marcus could see people moving around the office. Some carried coffee cups, others had stacks of papers. Everyone seemed busy and focused. He wondered if he would soon be one of them, walking these halls, contributing to important projects. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his younger sister, Maya. "Good luck today. You've got this," followed by several celebration emojis. Marcus smiled and quickly typed back a thank you. Maya had always been his biggest cheerleader, even when times were tough. The receptionist returned with a bottle of water and a glass filled with ice. "Here you go. Is there anything else you need?" "No, this is perfect. Thank you so much," Marcus said. "Great. Someone will come get you right at 10. Good luck with your interview." After she left, Marcus took a deep breath and looked around the room again. The conference room was separated from the executive boardroom by just a wall. He could see into the larger room through another set of glass panels. Several people in expensive suits were starting to gather around an even bigger table. That must be where the executives met, he thought. Marcus had done his research on the executive team, too. Patricia Chen was the chief financial officer, a woman who had worked her way up from an entry-level accounting position to the C-suite. Richard Morrison was the CEO, a former engineer who had founded the company in his garage. There was also Sarah Kim, the chief technology officer, and James Rodriguez, the chief innovation officer. These were the people who would decide his future. He took a sip of water and tried to calm his nerves. Job interviews always made him anxious, but this one felt especially important. At 32 years old, Marcus knew this was his chance to move into a leadership role. He had spent years proving himself at smaller companies, always being the one who worked harder, stayed later, and delivered better results than anyone expected. But he also knew the reality of being a black man in the tech industry. He had faced his share of doubters, people who assumed he was less qualified, people who questioned whether he had really earned his degrees and positions. He had learned to let his work speak for itself, but it still hurt every time someone looked at him with suspicion instead of respect. Marcus shook off those thoughts. Today was going to be different. Sterling Technologies had specifically reached out to him. They had seen his work, read his published papers on AI ethics, and contacted him directly about this position. They wanted him here. This wasn't about checking a diversity box. This was about his skills, his knowledge, and his potential. He glanced at his watch again. 9:45. 15 minutes until his interview would begin. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Cars moved through the streets like tiny toys. People walked on sidewalks, heading to their own jobs and appointments. Life continued its normal pace, unaware that Marcus Thompson was about to take the biggest step of his career. In the boardroom next door, he could see the executives taking their seats. A woman in a sharp gray suit was arranging papers in front of her. That must be Patricia Chen, he thought. She looked focused and professional, exactly the kind of leader he hoped to work with. Marcus returned to his seat and took another sip of water. He opened his notebook and reviewed his questions one more time. He wanted to know about the company's commitment to ethical AI development. He wanted to understand their plans for growth and innovation. He wanted to make sure this was a place where he could not just work but thrive. The minutes ticked by slowly. Marcus could feel his heart beating a little faster. This was it. This was his moment. Everything he had worked for, all the late nights studying, all the projects he had poured his heart into, all the times he had proven the doubters wrong. It all came down to this interview. He thought about his parents, immigrants who had worked multiple jobs to put him and Maya through school. He thought about his professors at MIT who had encouraged him to pursue his dreams. He thought about every person who had believed in him along the way. He wouldn't let them down. He wouldn't let himself down. Marcus took one final deep breath and straightened his shoulders. He was ready. Whatever questions they asked, whatever challenges they presented, he would show them exactly why Marcus Thompson was the right person for this job. His qualifications spoke for themselves. His experience was solid. His vision for the future of AI was clear and ethical. At exactly 9:50, Marcus heard voices coming from somewhere nearby. The building's audio system seemed to be on, carrying sound from other rooms. He assumed it was normal office chatter, background noise that came with working in a busy company. He paid it no attention, focusing instead on his presentation notes. What Marcus didn't know was that in just a few minutes, everything was about to change. The interview he had prepared for, the future he had imagined, the moment he had been working toward, all of it was about to take an unexpected turn. And the voices he heard through that audio system were about to reveal something that would test not just him, but the entire company's values and integrity.